Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Horror Stories. I know many of you use these episodes to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the episodes. Story 1. I don't usually share personal things on the internet, but this has been eating away at me for over a year, and I feel like I need to tell it somewhere, even if it's just here. My name is Eli Turner. I was 16 when it all happened. I lived in Bridgeport, Oregon, a small, quiet town tucked between the coast and the forest, where nothing much ever happens, except for our annual fair. That year, the fair was held on the first weekend of August. As always, it came with its rusty rides, overpriced cotton candy, and that mix of excitement and decay only a small-town fair can have. I went with 3 friends, Jordan, Casey, and Lena. We weren't exactly inseparable, more like together out of habit, boredom, or simple proximity. We spent the whole afternoon wandering through the booths, stuffing ourselves with junk food, trying to win those impossible games, and laughing at the creepy cardboard clowns decorating the haunted tunnel. Just after sunset, we noticed something curious, an old photo booth wedged between 2 food stands. On the outside, its red paint was chipped and its bronze trim tarnished with faded letters that read, "Instant Memories." It looked like something from the 60s, the kind of artifact you'd expect to find forgotten in a museum, not at a modern fair. Naturally, we couldn't resist. We all squeezed in. The inside smelled of dust and old plastic. We took the usual silly photos, sticking our tongues out, flashing peace signs, laughing for no reason. Everything seemed normal until the strip of photos came out. The first 3 were what we expected, us goofing off under the bad lighting. But there was a 4th image. We stared at it, confused. In it, we were still in the booth, same clothes, same angle. But none of us remembered taking that 4th picture. Our expressions were different, stiff, almost posed. And behind us in the dark corner of the booth stood a figure, a tall man with slicked back hair and a blank, distant gaze. His eyes weren't looking at the camera, but slightly to the left, as if he were watching something, or someone, outside the frame. At first, we thought it was a glitch or a prank. Maybe someone had edited the image, or the booth was rigged for scares like a haunted attraction. But it didn't feel like a joke. Lena went quiet, staring at the stranger's face. She murmured that he looked familiar but couldn't remember from where. Jordan tried to laugh, but his voice shook. I felt a strange pressure in my chest, like the air had gotten heavier. We looked around, searching for the man among the crowd, but no one resembled him. The booth attendant, an older man with a gray beard and mirrored sunglasses, sat behind the control panel. When we showed him the photo, he shrugged and said it was impossible. That model only prints 3 photos. Always has, he explained. We left soon after. The mood turned uneasy, everyone silent and distracted. I remember Casey had the strip crumpled in her pocket, the edges damp from her sweaty hands. No one spoke on the way home. We split up one by one, pretending nothing had happened. But that night, Jordan texted me. It was a photo of the same strip, zoomed in on the 4th frame. "He's looking at his hand," he wrote. And when I did, my stomach churned. The stranger's hand wasn't resting naturally, like someone trying to get into the frame. It was extended toward Lena's shoulder, just inches away, fingers stiff and twisted, as if frozen mid-reach. That's when it stopped feeling like a carnival prank. That's when everything began to feel truly wrong. The next morning, Lena didn't show up to school. No messages, no posts, nothing. Her mother thought she'd stayed over at Casey's house. Casey thought she'd gone home early. Jordan and I tried not to panic, but by lunchtime, the teachers were whispering. An officer came into class to speak with the principal, and by the end of the day, the police were already at the fair questioning vendors. That's when Casey decided to tell them about the photo booth. The next day, she brought the strip, wrinkled but clearly showing that unsettling 4th image. The officer examining it looked skeptical until he asked where it had been printed. Casey pointed to the same booth. When they went to check, something didn't add up. The attendant, I think his name was Jerry or Gerald, acted as though he'd never seen us before. He said a lot of people used the booth and he couldn't remember every group of kids. But when the officer mentioned the fourth photograph, his demeanor completely changed. "That machine's been in my family since '72, he said gruffly. "It's completely mechanical, analog. It can't print a fourth image." He even opened the back to show the inner roll, and it was true. The system was for 3 classic frames, nothing digital, no extensions. The officer watched him with a mix of confusion and distrust, as if he couldn't tell whether we were making it up or Jerry was hiding something. The air felt strange, tense, as if everyone understood something was wrong, but no one wanted to say it aloud. By the weekend, the booth was gone. Just gone. The row of vendors was the same. Funnel cake stands, hot dogs, cheap sunglasses, all in place. Except for where the booth had been. There was nothing. No wheel marks, no tarp, no trace. Jordan and I went back Saturday afternoon just to be sure, but it was as if it had never existed. We asked the other vendors. Most shrugged or looked puzzled. One even said, "Photo booth? Haven't seen one of those around here in years." It made no sense. We'd used it less than a week ago. We had the photo, but when we tried to show it to someone, something had changed. The last frame was darker, almost overexposed. You could still make us out, but the man's face had blurred as if melting into the shadows. After Lena's disappearance, things got worse fast. Her face was everywhere. Posters on lampposts, school bulletin boards, fences around the fairgrounds. But there were no clues, no witnesses, no signs. No one saw her leave, and her phone had gone dead that same night. The police questioned us several times. They wanted to know when we last saw her, what she said, how she acted. We told them everything. The booth, the fourth photo, the man behind us. But the more we insisted, the more we saw that skeptical look in their eyes. It was like they thought we were making it up. I especially remember Detective Barlow, who always paused before writing something in his notebook, as if debating whether it was worth noting down. Days later, it happened again. Jordan disappeared. The night before, he had texted me. He said he couldn't sleep, that every time he closed his eyes, he saw the man's face. He said he dreamt he was inside the booth, trapped, unable to leave, while the flash went off again and again without stopping. I tried to calm him down, told him it was just stress or guilt, but the next day he was gone. I rode my bike to his house. His mom said he'd left early for school, but he never arrived. Gone. No trace, just like Lena. I took the photo to the police again. This time I noticed something that froze my blood. In the fourth photo, Jordan didn't just look posed. He looked scared. His eyes were wider, as if he'd seen something right before the flash. And where the stranger's hand had once hovered near Lena's shoulder, it now floated beside Jordan. That's when I said it aloud. "I think he's taking us one by one." The officer didn't respond right away. He just stared at the photo for a long time before asking if I still had the original copy. When we compared the 2 strips, the one I'd shown days earlier and the one I had now, they weren't identical. The fourth frame had changed again. Jordan's face was now blurred too. After that, it was just Casey and me. She was terrified. She told me she wanted to leave, that we should run away, go to her cousin's place in Bend and stay there until things calmed down. But I couldn't do it. Something inside me told me running wouldn't help, that if we did, it would follow us. Casey didn't wait. That same night she left. I didn't hear from her again until 2 days later, when she called from a disposable phone, whispering like someone might be listening. "It's here," she kept repeating. "The booth. I saw it." She said she'd seen it near a gas station with the same red paint, the same faded instant memories letters, but this time it wasn't connected to anything. No cables, no plug, no generator. Just sitting there still, as if it didn't need power at all. Then the line cut off. I tried calling back, but the number no longer existed. The next morning I looked at the photo strip again, and I noticed something that made me shake. Casey's smile wasn't the same anymore. It was twisted, and her body seemed to lean slightly out of the frame, as if she were already starting to fade away too. After she disappeared, I stopped sleeping properly. I kept the strip inside an envelope at the bottom of a drawer, but it didn't matter. I could feel it there. It was like it vibrated, or breathed, waiting for me to look at it again. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I swear I'd hear the distant click of a camera without a flash, like someone taking photos in the dark. I started checking everything before bed, mirrors, windows, even the closet. But nothing helped. The fear wasn't loud or sharp. It was quiet, lingering, like something lurking just out of focus, waiting to be noticed. I began to think maybe it wasn't the booth itself, but the photo that was cursed, a trap, some kind of spell. Whatever it wasn't over. Eventually, I did what any scared teenager would do when no one believes them. I went back. Yes, it was stupid. I know that now. But at the time, I felt like if I saw the booth again, maybe I could stop whatever was happening. I went to the fairgrounds one night after midnight. There was no fair anymore, just an empty lot, trampled grass, and bits of trash blown by the wind. But the booth was there, in the exact same spot. No lights, no attendant, no movement, as if it had been waiting for me. I don't know what I thought I would do. Burn it, destroy it, beg it. I really don't know. But I went in, pulled the curtain closed, and sat down. At first, nothing happened. Then I heard the click. The first photo printed. Then the second. I didn't smile, didn't move, just stared straight into the camera. On the third flash, a chill ran down my spine, like someone had exhaled right behind me. I turned. No one was there. Then came the fourth click, and for an instant I saw the reflection of eyes in the booth's glass. I ran. I tore the strip out and sprinted away without looking back. When I got home, I checked it with trembling hands. The first 3 photos showed only me, as expected. But in the fourth I was gone. Only the empty booth and the man staring straight at the camera. The next day, I went to the police one last time. I brought everything. The photo, my account, every detail. I don't know what convinced them. Maybe my desperation, or maybe someone higher up started seeing a pattern. But that week, they reopened a cold case from 1985. Same fairgrounds, same booth, 3 missing teenagers, and a photo with an unexplainable fourth frame. The vendor from that time had also vanished, without a trace. I don't know what that booth is. I don't know if it's haunted, cursed, or possessed by something worse. But since that night, it hasn't returned. At least not to our town. I still have the photo. It's locked in a metal box wrapped in cloth deep in the back of my closet. I haven't looked at it in over a year. Sometimes I swear I hear the soft rustle of paper sliding inside, as if another frame were being added when no one's watching. I've moved twice, changed my number, deleted every photo I ever took with friends. But deep down, I know I'm just waiting. Not if it will come back, but when. Because once I too was in that fourth frame, and whatever is in there doesn't forget. Story 2. I'm not sure if this story fits here, but I've been reading accounts on this forum for years. And after what happened to my wife and me last spring, I think it was about time to tell it. My name is Josh, I'm 33, and my wife Emily is 29. Last year, we bought our first house together in a rural area of Ohio, an old rundown duplex on the outskirts of a small dying town called Mercer Hollow. It was the kind of place where people greet you from their porch but avoid looking you in the eye. The kind of town with more for sale signs than neighbors. We acquired the property at a foreclosure auction. It was absurdly cheap. Yes, it needed a lot of repairs, but we thought we'd found a bargain. It turned out what we'd found was something much darker. The house was 2 stories with no frills, peeling vinyl siding, faded blue shutters, and a half-collapsed shed in the backyard that smelled like wet leaves and mouse urine. But we loved it. It had potential. Under the grime were hardwood floors, an old clawfoot tub, and a wide porch perfect for summer evenings. Emily dreamed of painting murals in the guest room. I just wanted to brew coffee in the mornings without hearing the upstairs neighbors walking around. One of the big selling points was the full basement, ideal for storage. There was a locked door down there when we moved in, but we assumed it led to plumbing or some service panel. We didn't think much of it. We knew the previous owner had died. His name was Kenneth Doyle, an elderly man with no family and no obituary. One of those men who just fade from a town's memory. The real estate agent didn't say much, only that the house had been vacant for a while. In the attic we found piles of yellowed newspapers, all from between 2006 and 2012, and a Polaroid photograph of a little girl with the name Cassie written on the back in a shaky hand. It unsettled us, sure, but we figured it was just forgotten junk, part of the package. We were so focused on our future that we never stopped to question the past. It was in our second week living there when we finally got the basement door open. I used a pry bar after I lost patience hunting for the right key. The door was solid wood, unusually heavy, with deep scratches around the frame, as if someone had tried to force it shut, not open. Behind it was a narrow hallway that looked nothing like the rest of the basement. The plaster gave way to concrete walls painted black. At the end stood a steel door with no exterior handle, just a deadbolt and 5 latches. It looked like something from a nuclear fallout shelter. I stared at it for a long time before I dared to touch it. I didn't tell Emily anything. There was something about that door that gave me a wrong feeling. That same night, while she was brushing her teeth upstairs, I went down with a flashlight and tried every key we had. None of them fit. In the end, I used a drill to destroy the lock mechanism. A stupid move, I admit, but I needed to know what was behind it. As soon as the door gave way, a damp metallic smell hit my face. It wasn't mold. It was something sourer, a mix of rust, sweat, and decomposition. The air in there was denser, heavier. The room was the size of a small bedroom. No windows, no light fixture, just concrete walls, an old stained mattress in one corner, and a metal shelf bolted to the wall. And it was that shelf that disturbed me. On it were 5 glass jars, lined up with precision. Each one had a white label handwritten in black marker. Lindsay, Tasha, Aaron, Mara, and Isabel. Inside each jar was something I couldn't identify at first. One held what looked like a hair ribbon. Another, I swear, had baby teeth. Emily came downstairs halfway through my inspection, and I will never forget her expression. It was like something inside her switched off. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She only murmured, "This room doesn't appear on the floor plans." We called the police that same night. I didn't want to. I felt like we were intruding on something ancient and malignant, something that should have stayed buried. But Emily insisted. The first officer who arrived barely looked old enough to shave, but as soon as he saw the jars, he called for backup immediately. They cordoned off the basement, brought in a forensics team, and took everything away. We were required to stay at a motel for 3 days while they processed the scene. When they finally allowed us to return, the detective in charge, a woman named Riley, told us that one of the names matched a missing persons case from 2008. A girl named Mara Elliott, last seen walking home from school in a neighboring town. She was 11. That's when everything spiraled. News vans arrived, reporters camped in front of our house. Strangers knocked on the door to ask if we'd seen ghosts or felt evil energies. Someone even tried to sneak into the basement through the back window. Suddenly we were the murder couple, or worse, the sick collector's house, as the media put it. Emily stopped sleeping. She spent nights searching cases, reading articles, comparing names, dates, places. I, on the other hand, couldn't even go down to the basement without feeling like someone was watching me from that sealed room. About 2 weeks after the story went viral, Emily woke me around 2:30 in the morning. She said she'd heard footsteps in the basement. I tried to calm her, telling her it was the pipes or some animal. But I went down, a baseball bat in my hand. What I found froze my blood. The steel door was open again. I had closed it. I knew I had. And yet the latch was turned from the inside, as if someone had released it. The room looked empty, but the mattress had moved, just a few inches. And on the shelf there was a sixth jar. No label, just a dried bandage floating in cloudy water. I didn't tell that part to Emily. After that, we tried to sell the house. No one wanted it, not even after lowering the price. The place had become infamous. Bloggers, ghost hunters, and even true crime YouTubers tried to sneak into the yard to film content. One guy from Indiana even offered to pay to stay for a week to perform a ritual. Emily nearly threw coffee at him. We felt trapped, not by the mortgage, but by the story surrounding us. The town stopped seeing us as neighbors and started seeing us as part of the mystery. They watched us at the supermarket, left anonymous notes. One simply read, "It should have stayed closed." Riley kept in touch for a while. She seemed genuinely affected by the case. She told us privately they were analyzing DNA from the jars, but the results were inconclusive or contaminated. She also said that beneath each jar were scraping marks, as if they'd been moved again and again, carefully, in a ritual manner. And the last thing she told us is something I'll never forget. That room wasn't built to keep people out. It was built to keep someone in. Just remembering it gives me chills. I think about it too often, especially when I'm alone in the house. A month later, we made a decision. We reinforced the steel door with boards. We didn't discuss it. We just did it on a quiet Sunday morning. We covered the hallway with a new shelving unit and moved the washer and dryer to block access. Emily said it was for our peace of mind, but we both knew it wouldn't stop anything. Even so, it worked. The silence returned. No new jars, no noises. Just us, in a house we no longer loved, trying to feel normal again. Sometimes, though, when I'm in the kitchen, I swear I hear the squeal of metal, as if the door behind the wall were opening again. Just once, just enough to make me stand still. It took us 9 months to sell the property, but a buyer finally appeared. An out-of-state investor planning to convert the duplex into rental apartments. We disclosed what the law required. The rest, we left buried. We moved near Emily's sister in Columbus. We don't talk about Mercer Hollow. It's a silent pact between us. She won't bring it up if I don't. But some nights I wake up and find her staring at the ceiling, completely still. We both know what she's thinking about. That room. That damn room. A few weeks ago, I received an email from an unknown Gmail account. No subject, no message. Just one attachment. A photograph. It was an image of the shelf, the same room, the same jars. But now there were 8. 2 new ones. The labels read Josh and Emily. The photo was taken from inside the room, as if someone were in there. I tried to trace the IP address, but it bounced between servers until it was lost. I didn't tell Emily. I just deleted the message and pretended I never received it. Although, I saved a copy. I don't know why. Sometimes I wonder what Kenneth Doyle was doing down there all those years. Whether he was just a depraved old man with a sick obsession, or something much worse. Something that didn't start with him. Something he was trying to contain. Maybe that 4th room isn't a room at all. Maybe it's a door or a trap. Something that only needs names. I don't know. And honestly, I don't want to know. The only thing I know is that place changed us. Not just how we live, but how we think. About safety. About secrets. About the things that hide in plain sight, right beneath your feet. If anyone reading this ever finds a locked door in a house that shouldn't exist, don't open it. Whatever is behind it, it's not meant for you. And when you see it, it will see you too. Story 3. I used to drive the county night bus here in Caldwell, North Carolina. It wasn't much. Lonely roads, small towns, and now and then a nurse getting off the night shift or a drunk college kid heading back to Lenoir. My name is Dale McCready. In 2016, I'd been working for the Transit Authority for almost 9 years. Divorced, no kids, just me and my border collie Riggs. I knew every shortcut, every stop sign, and even the faces of my regular passengers. My life was monotonous, sure, but that monotony was comforting, at least until that night when I dropped off my last passenger just before Hollow Creek, and something happened that I still can't explain. It was a Thursday late March, one of those nights when the air still holds winter's chill and the forest seems too quiet. I remember looking in the rearview mirror after leaving my last official stop, an old grocery store by Route 90, and seeing that only one passenger remained. His name was Walter, an elderly man with dementia who sometimes rode the bus just to get out of the nursing home. Normally a nurse accompanied him, but that night he was alone. He was sitting 2 rows behind me, murmuring something I couldn't make out. I thought he had pressed the stop button by mistake when the bell rang for Hollow Creek Road. No one ever gets off there. That stretch of road isn't even on the official road anymore. It used to lead to some hunting cabins abandoned years ago. Still, I slowed down and stopped. The forest was so dense that the bus's headlights barely reached the first row of trees. Walter didn't move at first. Then he stood and shuffled down the aisle slowly, as if dragging something invisible. I watched him through the mirror and asked if he was sure this was his stop. He didn't respond. He just stepped off and walked into the line of trees. And that's when he said it. Right as I was about to close the door, I heard him murmur, "They came from the trees." I don't know why, but that phrase made my stomach twist. I had no idea what it meant, but it stuck with me. Walter disappeared into the darkness of the woods. I waited a couple of minutes in case he came back confused, but he never did. I called dispatch on the radio to report a quick turn since Hollow Creek doesn't connect to the main road. And then, the radio went dead. Total silence. Not even static. As if someone had unplugged the entire system. The dashboard lights flickered, the cabin lights blinked, and the engine made a dry electrical noise, though it was still running. I hadn't seen a single car for miles. The darkness behind me was absolute. When I looked in the side mirror, I saw something that still haunts me. The taillights of the bus reflected a figure among the trees. Something tall, something that hadn't been there a second before. I couldn't make out much, but the silhouette was narrow, too rigid to be human. For a moment, I thought it was a tree trunk or a trick of the light. Until it moved. It didn't walk. It bent, as if adjusting its weight fluidly, almost liquid, and then froze again. That was enough. I threw it in reverse, made a sharp turn and floored it toward the main highway. But just as I turned, I heard a thud against the side of the bus. It didn't sound like an animal or a branch. It sounded like long fingers scratching the metal. Slow, deliberate. I didn't stop. I drove for nearly 10 minutes without seeing another soul. When the radio came back to life, it emitted a faint, broken whisper, but no one responded when I called dispatch. I kept my eyes forward, though I could feel something following me. There were no headlights behind me, but the sensation was unmistakable. Someone or something was there. Every time I glanced at the mirrors, I thought I saw movement among the trees, shadows darting low and fast along the roadside. When I finally reached the depot garage, the parking lot was empty. That was strange. Usually Steve or Marcy were there for the night checks. I parked the bus, grabbed my logbook, and went into the break area. Total silence. The clocks were blinking like there'd been a power outage. I sat for a few minutes trying to calm myself. I wrote down what had happened with Walter, locked everything up, and went home. Or so I thought, because the next day they found that same bus abandoned on Hollow Creek Road. The engine was cold, the door was open, and I was missing. The problem is, I remember driving it back to the garage. I remember closing the gate behind me, but the GPS showed the route ending exactly where I dropped Walter off. Same time, same place. There was no footage from the onboard camera. The system logs cut off at 8:47 p.m. And the strangest part, Walter turned up the next morning sitting in a diner 20 miles away, barefoot and covered in pine needles. He kept repeating to the waitress, "They came from the trees. They came from the trees." They never found his shoes. The investigation went nowhere. The transit department reviewed the records. Local police got involved. Even brought in a tech from Raleigh to inspect the digital systems. They found contradictory logs. One said the bus had arrived at the garage. Another said it had shut off on Hollow Creek Road. No foreign fingerprints. No signs of struggle. No tire marks off the asphalt. Nothing. I tried to tell them what I remembered. The dead radio, the figure in the woods, the sound of the fingers. But I could see in their faces they didn't believe me. I looked like a lunatic. And maybe I was starting to feel like one. But how do you explain remembering something that officially never happened? Weeks later, Walter was transferred to another facility. He stopped speaking altogether. Doctors said his cognitive decline was sudden. He couldn't even feed himself anymore. The last thing he ever said before they moved him was to a nurse, "Tell the driver not to look in the mirror." When they told me that, a chill ran through me, because I had looked, and maybe I shouldn't have. Soon after, I quit. I couldn't get back on a bus. I couldn't even drive near Hollow Creek, not even in daylight. The trees looked too still, like they were watching. For a long time, I didn't tell anyone what really happened. The official version was that I'd had an amnesic episode, that I'd unconsciously driven the bus back, then walked on foot to the starting point. No charges, no punishment, just confusion. But ever since then, I've had a recurring dream. I'm driving the same route. The road never ends. The trees grow taller the farther I go. The radio is silent except for a whisper that grows louder and louder. Don't stop. And the worst part, always at the end of the dream I look in the mirror, and I'm not there. I don't know what's out there near Hollow Creek. I don't know if it was a hallucination, some forest phenomenon, or something worse. All I know is that something happened that night. Something that twisted time and folded reality in on itself. If you ever find yourself driving down a road with no street lights, no cell signal, surrounded only by tall trees, don't stop. And for the love of God, don't look in the mirror. Story 4. I don't usually talk about this. It's the kind of story that makes people look at you like you're crazy, or try to explain it away with something that sounds comforting but doesn't make any sense. My name is Mallory Grant. I was living in Nashville when it happened, working freelance gigs and trying to scrape together enough for rent. My older sister, Paige, had moved back to our hometown in West Virginia a few months earlier. We didn't talk every day, but we were very close, closer than most, especially after our mother died. She was the kind of sister who always knows when to text you, until one day she didn't. It was late July, brutally hot. I remember because the car's AC broke during the drive back to Clifton. That trip was the beginning of everything. Clifton is a quiet town, tucked between low mountains and half-forgotten roads. The farther you get from the highway, the more you feel like the rest of the world gave up on it. I hadn't been back in almost 5 years. Nothing seemed to have changed, but something felt different the moment I crossed the town sign. It wasn't anything you could see. It was how people looked at you from their porches. The silence in places that used to be full of noise, and the quarry. It was like even the trees leaned away from it. They said Paige had gone hiking alone the day she disappeared. She left no note, no message, just a voicemail I didn't hear until hours later. "Hey, I think I found something weird out here." And then static. Nothing more. The official report called it a tragic accident. The terrain around Clifton Quarry is steep and unmaintained. She probably slipped and drowned, they said. But there was no body. Only her phone found cracked at the edge of the woods and one shoe. I remember holding it at the station as if it could explain something to me. The officers kept repeating the word closure, as if saying it enough times would make me feel it. I stayed in Clifton that week. I asked around everywhere. Friends, old teachers, even the guy at the gas station. Everyone said the same thing. Paige shouldn't have been up there. No one explained why. One woman, Mrs. Dorsey, the one who baked pies for church on Sundays, seemed like she wanted to say more. I'll never forget how she took my hand and whispered, "Let her rest." Then she crossed herself and walked away as if we were standing at a grave. But Paige had no grave. She wasn't dead. I could feel it. like the thread between us hadn't snapped. I didn't go back to Nashville. I stayed. I rented a temporary room above the old post office. It smelled like dust and mothballs, but it was cheap and I needed to be close. Every day I drove to the edge of the woods near the quarry park and walked the same trail they said Paige had taken. It wasn't marked anymore, overgrown in places like nature had tried to erase it. I carried a flashlight, a notebook, water, and the voicemail saved on my phone. I don't know why. Maybe I thought that there I'd hear something new. The static always started at the same point on the trail. Always. After a few days, I found something. Not what I was looking for. Not Paige, but something. It was a photograph wedged into a crack in a rock near the quarry's eastern ridge. The edges were curled and the faces faded by the sun. 4 people posed in front of the same cliff where they said my sister disappeared. I didn't recognize them, but on the back someone had scrawled a year, 1993, and below that, in washed-out ink, "Don't come back." I took it straight to the sheriff, thinking it might be related. She barely looked at it before sliding it into a drawer and muttering, "Old prank." Locals like to scare hikers, but I saw something in her face, a flash of recognition she tried to bury under indifference. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the photo, about how it seemed placed on purpose recently, not dropped there decades ago. Around 3 a.m., I started rereading articles from the local archive. That's when I noticed something strange. Paige wasn't the first person to vanish near the quarry. There were others. I found 3 names from the same summer: Jack Redfield, Alyssa Lang, and Brent Waters. All hikers, all disappeared without a trace. Not a single follow-up article. Just a mention in the police blotter. And then nothing. As if the town had erased them. When I brought it up the next day at the diners, the waitress went rigid for a second and then said, "People get lost in the woods all the time," but she couldn't meet my eyes. I went back to where I'd found the photo. I searched for hours. That section of the trail was always colder, even with temperatures over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius. The air felt heavier, like breathing through a wet cloth. Past the ridge, there was a strange figure carved into the rock. 3 interlocking circles with jagged lines cutting through them. Didn't look natural. I brushed away dirt with my hand and saw other marks. Maybe words, but they were worn down. I took pictures, tried to sketch it, and then I heard it. Footsteps behind me, soft but steady. I spun around. No one. Nothing. But the feeling didn't go away. You know that prickle on the back of your neck like you're being watched? It was that, multiplied by 10. I left quickly. I nearly twisted my ankle on the way down. The next morning I found my car scratched. Not simple scuffs, deep, furious gouges along the doors. And on the rear window someone had etched the same symbol I'd seen on the rock, the 3 interwoven circles. I reported it, of course, but the officer who came barely pretended to take notes. When I mentioned the symbol, he stopped writing altogether. He only said, "Best not to stir things up, Miss Grant. Folks don't like outsiders picking at old wounds." I wanted to shout at him. I wasn't an outsider. My sister lived here. We grew up here. But in that moment, I understood something. They'd already decided she was dead and that I'd be next if I didn't stop. Even so, I couldn't. I knocked on more doors, this time with the names of the other missing people. Most pretended not to know them, but a guy named Eli, who worked part-time at the salvage yard, finally gave in. He said he remembered Jack Redfield, that Jack had been dating a local girl that summer, and they used to hang around the quarry at night. One day Jack disappeared and the girl's family moved away a week later. The town said it was a bear, he told me, but everyone knew that was a lie. There's something in those woods, Mallory, something that doesn't want to be found. He wouldn't say more. He kept looking over his shoulder, like someone might be listening. The next day I went for the last time. I don't even know why. Maybe I thought I'd find a piece of Paige's necklace or hear her voice again. I brought a shovel, planning to dig near the carvings. Instead, I found a hollow already made. Not fresh, but recent enough that the soil was loose and uneven. Inside was a small box wrapped in cloth. It contained 3 things: a lock of blonde hair tied with red thread, a rusty compass, and another photograph. This one showed Paige. She was standing in front of the quarry, looking off to the side as if someone had said her name at the last second. On the back, in the same handwriting, "She saw too much. Then I ran. I didn't look back." The next morning I left Clifton, packed everything, and drove straight through the night back to Nashville. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't call the sheriff. But I kept the photo. It's in a locked drawer in my apartment, and sometimes I take it out just to remind myself it was real. Paige is still missing in the records. No remains, no new evidence. Just a sister who went for a walk and didn't come back. Every now and then I dream of those woods, of the quarry. I see her standing at the edge, facing the trees. I want to shout for her to turn around, but she never does. She just takes one step forward, and I wake up before she falls. Story 5. My name is Sarah Whitman. I've lived my whole life in Pine Hollow, Alabama. One of those towns where everyone knows everyone, and the loudest thing on a weekday morning is the hum of lawnmowers or the clinking of coffee cups at Ruby's Diner. I've been teaching 9th grade English at Pine Hollow High for 11 years. Nothing special. Literature, grammar, and the occasional pep talk for some kid who doesn't think he's smart enough. I live in a modest little house 3 streets from the school. I drive a '99 Toyota Corolla, and I have a cat, Milo, who only shows affection when he's hungry. That's how quiet, slow, and predictable my life had always been, until it wasn't. It was late March, still cold enough to need a jacket before sunrise. I arrived at school around 6:45 a.m., coffee in hand, ready to prep my first class. But something felt off. The main office was strangely silent. Brenda, the secretary, usually chatty and a little nosy, looked pale and distracted. "Did you hear?" she whispered. "Mr. Barlow died last night." I blinked. "Ray?" "The janitor." She nodded, eyes glossy. I didn't know what to say. Ray Barlow had worked at the school longer than I'd been alive. A quiet older man, always in an oversized green jumpsuit. He used to joke that he'd been there since the first brick was laid. It surprised me, but it didn't break me. Ray must have been around 70, and he smoked like it was still legal indoors. Brenda said it was a heart attack. They'd found him that morning in his small break room behind the gym. His family had already been notified, and someone had gone to clear out his things. It was unsettling how quickly everything moved on. Life goes on, I guess. I finished the day, taught classes, collected To Kill a Mockingbird essays, and endured a teachers' meeting that felt endless. But that afternoon, something happened I still can't explain. Around 4 p.m., I was in the teacher's lounge grading papers when I saw a small cardboard box on the table. A sticky note read, "Barlow's stuff." Someone must have emptied his locker and left it there. Curious, I peeked inside. Worn-out pens, keys, 2 crushed packs of Marlboros, a rusty soup-smelling thermos, and a cheap spiral-bound black notebook. I almost left it, but something made me open it. Inside were pages and pages of names, all handwritten in block letters, 1 per line. Next to most were dates. Some had brief notes. Accident, missing, lost. I didn't recognize many until I hit a page in the middle. My eyes locked on it. Sarah Whitman. My name. Beside it, a single word. Next. I froze. I didn't even breathe. I stared again and again, hoping I'd misread. But no. It was my name, written neatly. No scribbles, no mistake. I flipped through more pages, looking for a pattern. The names before mine, Travis Holman, Denise Kerr, Miles Bradley, each had dates and those same short words. Denise, I remembered her, died in a car crash 2 years ago. Travis fell off his roof cleaning gutters. Miles, something about getting lost during a hunting trip. The more I read, the clearer it became. This wasn't random. It was a countdown. I wanted to believe it was some dark joke, an eccentric habit of a lonely old man. But Ray Barlow wasn't senile. He was quiet, yes, but sharp. He could fix a jammed locker with a paperclip and a lighter. He remembered everyone's birthdays without a calendar, and he always greeted me with a look that now seemed to know more than it should. I closed the notebook. My hands were trembling. I sat there motionless, waiting for someone to jump out and say, "Gotcha." But no one came. The building was empty, cold, echoing. I shoved the notebook into my bag and left without saying goodbye. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I took it to the sheriff. Sheriff Maddox, a big man with a square jaw and a permanent smell of barbecue, flipped through the notebook, frowning. "You're telling me the janitor kept a list of names, and all these people are dead?" I nodded. "And yours says next." I nodded again. "You think he was planning something?" I didn't know. I just wanted them to tell me what it meant. Maddox sighed, promised to check the names, and had me sign a report. I should have felt safer. I didn't. That night, the strange things began. My porch light started flickering, even after I changed the bulb. Milo, my cat, refused to go near the living room window. He sat on the threshold, growling low as if something was outside. At first, I laughed it off. Stress, I told myself. A creepy notebook and a few coincidences meant nothing. Until the phone calls started. My landline rang. Silence. No one spoke. I hung up. And 30 seconds later, it rang again. Always 30 seconds. I started counting. I stopped answering, but it kept ringing. After 3 days, I was locking every door and window, even in daylight. I jumped at my own reflection. At school, I felt eyes on me, even when the halls were empty. One student, Hannah Pierce, asked if I was okay. I said I was just tired. Truth was, I hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a time. Every creak in the house, every gust of wind made me think it was coming for me. And the worst part, Sheriff Maddox stopped returning my calls. When I went to the station, his deputy said he was sick and someone would get back to me. No one did. That Friday when I got home from work, my front door was ajar. I knew I'd locked it. I always double-check. I didn't go inside. I backed away, heart pounding, and called the police from my car. When they arrived, they did a quick sweep. They said nothing looked disturbed, but something was missing. The notebook. I'd hidden it in my closet, inside a boot box under coats. It was gone. I asked if they'd taken it, thinking Maddox might have requested it. They had no idea what I was talking about. One even joked, maybe Barlow's ghost came to fetch it. I felt like I was losing my mind. That night I stayed at Maggie's, another teacher's house. I didn't tell her everything, just that someone had broken in. She offered me wine and her couch, but around 2:30 a.m. a metallic tapping woke me. Not loud and just a slow click, like a coin hitting glass. It was coming from the living room window. Maggie lived on the second floor of an old duplex. I sat up slowly and saw the silhouette of a man outside the window, standing, head tilted as if listening. There was no balcony, no ledge, just him, there. I turned on the light. He vanished. At dawn, I told Maggie everything. I thought she'd laugh, but she went pale. She said she remembered hearing a story years ago about a student who vanished after Barlow warned him not to go into the woods behind the school. He was never found. People said Barlow was strange, but what if he knew things? What if he didn't just know? What if he made them happen? She didn't say it aloud, but I saw it in her face. I told her I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to leave. The next day, I packed the essentials, took a leave from school, and drove to Tennessee to my brother's place. I told no one where I was going. I turned off my phone, deleted my accounts, vanished. And for a while it worked. No more calls, no more tapping, no more shadows. I was gone for 2 weeks. When I came back to Pine Hollow to collect the rest of my things, I found a note taped to my door. No envelope, just a single sheet. At the top, my name in block letters. Below it, one word, released. That's when I realized it was never about killing or chasing. It was worse. Being watched, evaluated, as if some unseen system decided who stayed and who went. Whatever that notebook was, it wasn't just a list. It was a process, a filter. I don't know why I was spared. Maybe because I ran. Maybe because I talked. Maybe because someone took the notebook before the inevitable could happen. I have no answers, only scars no one can see, and a fear that never really fades. I don't teach in Pine Hollow anymore. I moved to another district, started over. New town, new apartment, but sometimes very late at night. I swear I hear a slow tapping at the window again. Story 6. I was 10 years old when my brother Josh disappeared. We lived in a little Vermont town called Alders Hollow. Population just over 1,000. One of those places where everyone greets everyone, whether they know you or not. It was late October 2009, right when the air starts to turn razor sharp, and leaves cover every inch of the ground in a crunchy copper-colored mess. Josh was 12, 2 years older than me, and almost every day we walked home from school together. There was a trail that cut through the woods behind the old textile factory on Alder Creek Road. A shortcut we always used. Everybody used it. It was faster than going through town and just spooky enough to feel like an adventure when you were a kid. The factory had been abandoned for as long as I could remember. Half the roof collapsed, windows blown out, the whole structure leaning like it could come down with the next real snowfall. People said it closed in the 70s after some kind of accident, but nobody talked much about it. Even so, it wasn't fenced off or anything. It was just there. A rotting hulk with ivy clawing up the walls and rusty pipes groaning in the wind. Josh used to joke that it looked like a monster with its mouth slightly open. We walked past it every day, and every day we dared each other to peek through one of the broken windows, though we never actually did. That Thursday started like any other. We had science tests in the morning, and Josh spent lunch trading hot Cheetos for answers. He always wore that cocky grin like nothing could touch him. After class, we took the same back path as always. It had rained earlier in the week, so the ground was a little soft and the leaves stuck to the earth. I remember Josh walking ahead, stepping on a branch that snapped loud, louder than normal, like it echoed. I stopped to tie my shoe. When I looked up, he was gone, just like that, as if he'd vanished mid-step. At first, I thought he was messing with me. It was exactly the kind of thing he'd do. Hide behind a tree, jump out to scare me, and then laugh the whole way home. I called his name a couple of times, louder each time. Nothing. No footsteps, no crunching leaves. The air felt strange, still. I didn't know what that meant then. I just knew something was wrong. I stood there for a minute, maybe scanning the trees, until I saw something up ahead. A dark blotch near the factory's foundation. It wasn't moving, but it wasn't part of the building. I took a few steps and then I saw it. Josh's backpack, ripped along one side, with his science book and half a sandwich lying in the mud beside it. I froze. I didn't even think to pick up the backpack. My brain just shut off. I remember one bizarre detail. The sandwich was almost intact, but the plastic baggie had tiny tears in it, like it had been scratched, not ripped the way a person would. I didn't see blood, no footprints, no signs of a struggle, just a terrifying silence. I wanted to run, but my legs felt heavy, like I was moving underwater. Every sound, the crunch of my steps, the groan of the trees, sounded too loud. Eventually, I made it home out of breath, and all I could do was stand in the doorway staring at my mother while she kept repeating, "Where is your brother? Where is Josh?" I couldn't answer. Something broke inside me the moment I saw that backpack. I didn't sleep that night. Police arrived, then searched dogs, then more police. They combed the woods behind the factory for days. Helicopters, volunteers, even schoolmates with flashlights and gear. Nothing. Not a single item of clothing. Not a drop of blood. The only other thing they found was an old rusty key, buried in the dirt near where I'd seen the backpack. No one knew what it belonged to. It looked ancient, like something you'd find in a museum or lost in the back of Grandpa's junk drawer. The cops didn't know what to do with me. I didn't talk. I couldn't. I stared at the floor, tracing the wood grain with my finger over and over, like that could distract my mind from what I'd seen. They tried therapists. My teachers gave me passes. They pulled me out of school for a while. Everyone thought it was trauma. And maybe it was. But the truth is, I wasn't just scared. I was afraid to say what I really saw after I found the backpack. Because I did see something. I just don't know if anyone would believe me even now. Right before I ran, I caught a glimpse, through one of the factory's broken windows, of something. It was small, too small to be a person, but tall enough to be upright. Its skin looked wrong, like old paper left out in the rain, and its eyes didn't blink. They just stared, huge, glassy, unmoving. I remember thinking it looked like a doll someone had tried to bury and then dug back up. And I swear that just before I turned to run, it smiled. Not a human smile. Something crooked, like it didn't know how to do it right. That was the last thing I saw before everything in my head went dark. After that day, I never went near the woods again. Even when I started talking again a few months later, I never told anyone. Not my mom, not the police, not even the psychologist they sent me to. I didn't know how to explain it without sounding crazy. It took me years to stop flinching whenever I passed a window at night. In time, my mother moved us to Montpelier to be closer to her sister. She couldn't stand staying in Alders Hollow. Not with the empty room. Not with the way the neighbors stopped asking about Josh after the first year. But here's the thing. Josh wasn't the first kid to vanish behind that factory. Not really. Years later in high school, and finally brave enough to look into it, I found mentions of a boy named Eli Morton, missing in 1974. Same age as Josh, same shortcut. No body, no answers. Just a little local article about the search and a single line from the sheriff at the time that chilled me. We found a key. That was all we found. From there, I dug deeper. It turned out there were 5 other cases over the years. All kids, all between 10 and 13, all vanished without a trace, always near the factory. That's when I understood something had been happening there for decades, and nobody talked about it. The adults in Alders Hollow had turned it into a kind of boogeyman story to scare kids. Don't play near the factory, they'd say. But it was real. Something was there, and whatever it was, it wanted children. I think that's why it let me see it. It didn't want me. Not yet. I was the younger brother. I was supposed to come back and remember. 2 years ago, I went back. I don't know why. I guess I needed to see it again to prove to myself it was just a rotten building and nothing more. The factory was still there, only worse. Part of it had collapsed completely, but the windows were the same. Same shattered glass, same angle. And I swear I didn't get within 10 feet before I heard it. A soft scraping like nails on wood. I didn't stick around to find out what it was. I turned around and left. And I'm never going back. I don't know what that key was for, or what that thing inside the factory really was. I only know that something took my brother, and it's still there, waiting for the next kid who gets too close. I don't care if no one believes me. I'm writing this because if anyone in Vermont reads this and lives near Alder Creek Road, don't take the shortcut. Please don't. Story 7. I've lived in Elridge, Kansas my whole life. It's one of those places you can drive through in under 10 minutes without realizing you passed a town at all. I'm 38 and work at the only restaurant in town, Stella's Diner. It's been open forever, passed down through generations, and everyone there knows each other by name. Nothing important ever happens here, or at least nothing people talk about out loud. That day started like any other. Quiet breakfast rush, the same 3 old men arguing about the jukebox, and me in the kitchen frying sausages like I had 1,000 times before. Around 8:45 a.m., I went to the back storage room for more eggs. When I came back, she was there. A girl I'd never seen before, standing behind the counter, wearing one of our uniforms. Thin, pale-skinned, long dark brown hair tied back with a green ribbon. She looked like she'd stepped out of an old photograph. Her face had something out of time about it. Not ugly, not strange, just old-fashioned, as if she didn't belong to this decade. I assumed Stella, the owner, had hired her to help for the weekend. But Stella wasn't working that day, and no one had mentioned new hires. The girl smiled at me like we already knew each other. "Good morning," she said, setting a glass tip jar beside the cash register. I nodded and went back to my work, but something about the jar caught my attention. It didn't have the usual tips label. This one read, "For local families in need." And below that, a list of names handwritten in flawless black ink. At first, I didn't think much of it. In this town, people have good hearts, and we've all had rough patches. But later, during the lunch rush, Jim Carrion, one of our regulars, walked up to the jar, frowned, and muttered, "Well, I'll be damned. I know that name. And that one, too." Jim had been the mailman here for decades. He knew the town better than Google Maps. He leaned closer, read a few more, and said, voice trembling, "These people, they're dead." I dropped my spatula. "You sure?" I asked, half laughing. But he wasn't joking. He started listing them one by one and recalling how they died. A house fire on Hollow Creek, a car that ran off the road near the old quarry highway, a missing boy whose body was found months later by the river. And yes, I started recognizing the names too. Not all at once, but when you hear them aloud, something clicks. What was unsettling was that these weren't ordinary deaths. They were the tragedies people in town avoid talking about. The whispered ones. The ones that make eyes drop to the floor. I went to the counter and picked up the jar. The names were written in perfect cursive, the kind of penmanship they taught in schools in the 1960s. I asked the girl, since no one had introduced her, where she'd gotten the list. Without looking at me, while calmly pouring coffee, she said with a serene smile, "From the town records." I wanted to make sure I honored the right people. I remember how she said honored, like she wasn't talking about helping families, but about remembering the dead. I pressed her again, asking which records she meant. She shrugged. "An old one. I found it in the library. But our library burned down 3 years ago. It was never rebuilt." By mid-afternoon, the story of the jar had spread through town. People started coming into the diner just to see the list. Some went silent. Others got angry. A woman, Cheryl Barnes, pointed to one of the names with a shaking finger. "That was my cousin. Died in a car crash in 2016, and no one still knows what really happened." She asked the girl directly why she'd written his name. The girl smiled again, that same old-fashioned, perfectly calm smile. Because he needed to be remembered. That's when I realized no one knew her name, not even Linda, our manager, who'd been handling payroll for over 20 years. She checked the employee files. Nothing. No application, no social security number, no hiring form. It was as if the girl had just appeared inside the building without a trace. Uneasy, Linda called Stella from the back office. I heard her whispering, as though afraid the girl could hear her. When she came back, she was white as a sheet. She didn't say much. She just walked over and asked the girl where she lived. The girl smiled again, that unnerving calm never breaking. "I don't stay in one place for long," she said, and went on wiping the counter. The whole moment felt wrong. She didn't seem surprised or nervous. She seemed like she was expecting it. Near closing time, things got worse. I stayed to help clean, and when I came out of the kitchen, around 9:30 p.m., the jar was gone. Just like that. No sign of the girl either. Her apron was hanging neatly on the back of a stool, folded with precision, as if someone had taken the time to leave everything in order. The next morning, Linda checked the cameras. Every recording from that night was corrupted, just static. In my 17 years at Stella's, that had never happened. And no one had ever saw her again. The next day, the whole town was talking about it. Someone called the local paper, but they refused to print the story. Too sensitive, they said. A few people tried to find out if she had family around, but no one recognized her. Linda even took a copy of the staff schedule to the sheriff's office. Deputy McCoy looked over the papers and said flatly, "That girl was never hired. We don't have any record of her." And just like that, she was gone completely. No name, no footprint, no paperwork. Just a strange memory, and a jar full of names that shouldn't have been known. A week later, Jim, the old mailman, came back to the diner. This time he was quiet, a notebook in hand. He said he couldn't stop thinking about the list, so he'd started rewriting the names from memory. He got to 13 before he stopped, because he realized something. Every single one of them had died on the same day of the month, the 17th. Different years, different causes, but always the 17th. And he was right. We checked. I'd never seen him so shaken. I wish I could say we found answers, that she came back, or that someone figured out who she was. But none of that happened. Some think it was a prank, others a twisted coincidence. But I don't believe that. There was something about her. The way she moved, the way she spoke, the way she smiled. It was like watching someone who had done all this before, like she had been in that same diner in other towns, over and over again, repeating the same act, like a ritual. I don't work at Stella's anymore. I quit about 4 months after all that. But sometimes when I'm driving down a back road and see a small diner glowing in the night, I can't help but look through the window, half expecting to see her there behind the counter, folding napkins or pouring coffee with that same serene smile. And I wonder, with a chill that never goes away, if I walked in, would she remember me too?